The Select Committee is looking into the future of public service broadcasting in the Isle of Man, and at the event this week was Manx Radio. We've got the chairman and also the man in charge of the day-to-day, Mr. Pugh, Mr. North. I would like to start actually interesting with Mr. North, because I've made notes. You have to excuse me putting on my garage glasses. But you started by saying that you think Manx Radio has become a state broadcaster now. Can you explain what you were trying to say there?
Yeah, what I was trying to say, and I'm glad you referred to it as an event yesterday, the first public hearing at the Select Committee on Public Service Broadcasting. And the point is that as far as public service broadcasting should be totally independent. Now, at the moment, we have to rely on government in a big way, and of course there have been changes, and I gave one example yesterday, when about 3-4 years ago, we suddenly there was a value for money report, and it basically came out with a very good report about Manx Radio. But 2 weeks later, and we'd just done our budgets for that year, 2 weeks later, we were presented with a bill from Treasury that said, we want another 83,000 per year from you for a contribution pension of your staff. Now, that's fine. That isn't a problem. The fact that they hadn't actually told us about it, and the value for money report comes through Tynwald, it had been approved by Tynwald. They must have known about the money, and yet that sort of problem gives us, we had to immediately cancel some of the things we were doing, our planning at Manx Radio, and find £83,000 for that year. Now, that Treasury, and the Treasury are extremely helpful in terms of working with Manx Radio, but we are not totally independent and can't plan our own future.
Underfunded.
Any state broadcaster, that is all planned for you.
Underfunded with no independence from government. I mean, that's quite a statement to say.
Well, it should. That's what a public service broadcaster is.
So you feel very much tied to the whims of what government wants from you?
Not in a day-to-day. I mean, the newsroom is editorially independent. But if you can see that political axes to grind within government as opposed to Parliament is the crux of it. And Manx Radio should be independent, with Tynwald deciding what function and how we operate and how we can operate independently, not the Treasury suddenly tightening the purse strings and changing the whole operation and plans of the public service broadcaster. Do you understand that, Anthony?
Well, I think you also have to bear in mind what the definition of public service broadcasting is. Public service broadcasting is for the people, to be paid for by the people, and to be monitored by the people through an authority or something like that. And equally important is, what is it not? It isn't for a government or a parliament or a president. It's not for a political party. It's not for a trade union, a church, or any lobbyist. So we have to be independent to function properly as a public service broadcaster.
Well, I mean, I was coming to that, but public service broadcasting, you said between 9:30 and 12 and 2 till 6 in the daytime hours are non-public service hours. So that's not leaving a lot, is it, really?
No, I didn't say they're non-public service. What we do each year in our annual report is define our output by genre. And in last year's report, 71 hours were defined by genre, and the remainder wasn't. But the afternoon programming is public service broadcasting. If the weather changes or there's an incident on the island, we modify our programming.
But it is playing pop music mostly. I mean, it's doing what 3FM and Energy to some degree are doing. I mean, they can report on a traffic jam as much as you can, probably. But
of course we play music. And that is the crux of the matter. The aim after the Darwin report was that Manx Radio would be a more heavily speech-based radio station. However, with our subvention going down 27% over the last 3 years, with our commercial income having dropped by about 45% over the last 10-ish years or so, then what's had to go? The speech part of the public service broadcasting.
And you threatened that the other day, didn't you? You said that it may have to lose some more if the budgets go further down. But don't you think that is the bit that you should be protecting rather than the music side?
I agree totally. That's exactly what we should be protecting.
We do. It's the speech, as you know, Paul, that costs the money. I think, isn't it something like 10 times more
yes,
than playing
Can I
music?
quote, and forgive me, but I quoted, you said £3.30 per hour it costs to run this sort of operation at £476,000.
That £3.30 per hour is per head of population, per annum.
And the sport comes in at 31p, making 44,000, yeah?
Yes.
So it's good, you translate it for me. So it's costing you £1,080 per hour to do news? You accept that?
No, to do speech programming.
Just speech. So, but news, current affairs, that sort of thing, which is the same. But a music hour is £104.
Yes. These are very much averages, and that's what it is. And, so why does it cost 10 times as much to do speech? Well, let me give you one example, which is an example I used yesterday at the Select Committee. If we send a reporter to a public meeting in Ramsey or in the south of the island, then they travel for half an hour, they spend half an hour setting up, the meeting lasts for 2 hours, 2.5 hours. They'll then want to do a few key interviews afterwards, another half hour. They'll travel back to Broadcasting House, they'll edit the tape. It'll take them 2 hours or so to do that. And what do we get out of it? 3 or 4 minutes. That is very expensive broadcasting.
But that's what you're paid to do, it might be said.
It is exactly what we pay to do, but everybody has to remember that our subvention only accounts for 45% of our income. The rest of our income, the other 55%, comes from commercial activities. So yes, we pay to do the speech, but the speech costs far more than the money that we're getting. We're subsidising the speech with the commercial revenues. And because the island has been licensed, we have 3 radio stations on the licence. That's great for more choice for the listeners. But the reality is we haven't been able to support multiple ferry companies. We're hearing today of the problems with Flybe. Competition is great when the marketplace is large enough to sustain it. And what's happened here is that some 10 years ago, we were earning about £1 million a year in commercial revenues. Inflation has gone up 52% in that time. However, the total commercial income of Manx Radio, Energy FM and 3FM is less than that £1.5 million. Okay. We haven't been able to grow. What we've done is share the money out between us.
And that competition is there. In fact, you said yesterday, Mr. North, you signed off on Energy FM's licence, didn't you?
But their initial licence, the licence actually, it was at the DTI. That was when they were looking for contribution from government, and it was approved, granted.
Do you think it was a mistake to have competition in the Isle of Man?
No, not at all. In fact, I think if anything, 2 stations, I think, would have obviously kept us far more on our toes. But I think it was the Darwin report actually said, there was room for one other commercial station. And of course, that was what was being planned. But then suddenly, and I remember the debate in Tynwald, where it was made quite clear on the floor of the House that there should only be 2, I think it was. Several members said this. But then somebody got up and said, he wanted an opinion from the Attorney General, Mr. Corlett. And if I remember rightly, the Attorney General actually came back and said, well, if they've been promised verbally, then they will have to have the licence. Right. And that was it. And that's how they got their licence.
Okay, well, we've got lots more to talk about. I said there's quite a bit to this, so we'll be back in our next section.